Welcome back to another Kray video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss any videos. And for people really into the Krays, join our private Facebook group, Krays Crime Lords of London, where you can find stuff possibly unavailable anywhere else. We're an established group and very friendly. The link is in the YouTube description section.
We had all just been sentenced and dispersed to various prisons around Great Britain, and there were appeals on behalf of all the defendants. They were heard in the High Court in the Strand in July 1969, but they got nowhere. The real battle for us was now just beginning, the battle to survive in the prison system. The police were happy. They had finally put away the Kray twins. As Nipper Reid said, the moment the verdicts were announced at the original trial, I didn't look up. I was afraid that people would see the tears in my eyes. But was it just Reid and the police who brought us down? Not according to a book called The Evil Firm, The Rise and Fall of the Brothers Kray, which was published shortly after the end of the trial. It was written by 3 Daily Mirror journalists, Brian McConnell, Tom Tullett and Edward Vale. This was not a pro-Kray book, it was very anti-us. But the book shows that me and Reg were sunk not just by the traitors in our own firm, but also by the Inland Revenue, who had been called in by someone close to the top of the Labour government of the day. That someone was probably the Home Secretary, James Callaghan, who was later to become Prime Minister. Questions had been asked about us in the House of Commons, and the government were sensitive about suggestions that the police could not control us. Brian McConnell, who was tracking our activities for the Daily Mirror, claims he was summoned to a secret government office in Shepherd's Bush, 5 miles from the centre of London, and told by a special inspector of the Inland Revenue that he must reveal all he knew about us, or else, and that his conversation with the agent was covered under the Official Secrets Act. McConnell wrote in his book, "The Krays toiled at various activities, but they did not spin their coins to the satisfaction of HM government. It did not need a crystal ball to see they were under some sort of surveillance." He also spoke of the many kinds of investigators engaged on the matters Kray. I believe there is clear evidence that there was a massive conspiracy over many years and involving many government departments, which had the sole aim of bringing us down. At our trial, there were accusations in the press of government and police persecution and corruption. One newspaper spoke of an arch-conspirator, a gross perverter of justice with a criminal soul, standing in such a strong position that even the courts are putty in his hands. I believe at the end of the day the government of England were even more corrupt and evil than they said we were. The basic secrecy concerning Broadmoor reinforces the public's fear and ignorance of the place. The public probably has more knowledge of what is on Mars than they have of what Broadmoor is like. The patients call Broadmoor the funny farm because of the weird things that happen here. Sometimes they are amusing, sometimes they are sad. Often they are quite moving. I'll give you an example. One day, I was sitting in a hut in the kitchen gardens with a group of patients. Since I met my wife, Kate, I've got interested in gardening. I like working on the plants and vegetables and watching them grow. It relaxes me. Anyway, we were just having a short break from our work, a cup of tea and a smoke. Suddenly an old man called Chris got on his knees on the stone floor and started to pray. He's not a religious man, just a sinner and a patient like the rest of us. But he was oblivious to everyone and everything, and it was the most spontaneous act of prayer I've ever seen in my life. That's the sort of thing you could only see in the funny farm. In the middle of all the hate and sadness, a moment of genuine emotion. You get it all here. You see every kind of man here, every kind of problem. And I've seen it all because I've been here a long time. They sent me here on the 25th of July in 1979. I cannot forget that date because after the hell I went through at Parkhurst Prison, I was pleased to get here. It was a good day for me. It was Nobby Clark who told me that Broadmoor can be heaven or hell. It just depends on you. He told me that in Parkhurst too. He said that if you behave yourself, it's heaven. But if you misbehave, they'll make your life hell. And it's true. Nobby had a troubled life and he was sent crazy by those bastards at Parkhurst. Finally, he couldn't take any more. He speared a black fella, stabbed him when he was lying in the bath. Did him up good and proper, so they sent him here. Nobby had long grey hair and a long grey beard and bright twinkling eyes. He eventually died here after a heart attack. But I'll never forget what he told me about Broadmoor, because he got it right, dead right. I've nearly always chosen to play by the rules at Broadmoor, and if it hasn't always been heaven, well, it hasn't been hell either. Nowhere near as bad as it would have been if I'd stayed at Parkhurst. That place was a nightmare. When Melford Stevenson sent us down in 1969, I was sent to Durham Prison in the northeast of England. My older brother Charlie was sent to the same prison, and so was Ian Barry, who had been a loyal member of the firm. We were all kept well apart, though, segregated from the moment we arrived at the jail. Reggie was sent to Parkhurst. Durham Prison is a bastard place, and some right bastards worked there. From the word go, certain of the screws made it very clear they were going to kick the shit out of me every chance they got. Never one-on-one, of course, no. Just a gang of them against me. They saw me as a hard man who had to be broken, not a fella who could be sick in the head with depression, who needed treatment. They had a simple technique, and you can see it in any prison anywhere in the world. They torment, harass and wind up a con until he can take no more and retaliates. That then gives them the chance to give the con a good hiding. The punches and kicks and beatings from their clubs are always aimed at the body, never at the face. That way, the beating doesn't show. Then the con is given days or weeks, sometimes months, in the punishment block. Locked up for 23 hours a day, every day, in solitary confinement, with no one and nothing for company. If you're lucky, you get an hour's exercise walking by yourself in a tiny yard. You're always watched, of course, day and night. And there's always an electric light burning in your cell. You sleep because you are bored and depressed. There's nothing else to do except sleep and think. But they'll always wake you up, just for the hell of it. And they'll always try to wind you up, G you up, whenever they can. It passes the time for the screws. Eventually they throw you back into the main prison system, and it all starts up again. It's all done for a purpose, of course. It's designed to break a con's body and his spirit, and it's very effective. Ask the Gestapo and the KGB. They had it down to a fine art. Only the strong survive, and, funnily enough, some cons become even stronger because of it. But if you have a physical or mental problem to begin with, you have no chance. I do not say that every screw in every jail in Britain is like this, but I can say that in the 3 years I was in Durham Prison, I can only remember one screw with any humanity in him. That was a senior officer called Chief Bunker. On one occasion, when 4 or 5 screws were giving me a good kicking while I lay on the floor trying to curl up and protect my head, I heard him shout out, "That's enough, stop beating him." I've never forgotten that one single act of decency, and even now I still send him a Christmas card every year. I realised looking back that my reputation and the publicity surrounding our case meant that I was bound to be the one the screws were looking for. Make no mistake, I'm not whining. I could take and dish out punishment as much as any other con, and more than most when I was young and fit, but the treatment I was getting was over the top. Our mother could see what had been happening every time she came to visit me at Durham. She could see the cuts and bruises from the beatings, and she could see that mentally I was going to pieces. So she started a campaign to get me moved away from Durham to Parkhurst, where she thought I would get better treatment and where I would also be close to Reggie. She sent a lot of letters to the Home Office, to our MP, and to the press. In 1972, I was finally moved to Parkhurst Prison on the Isle of Wight. I know the island itself is an attractive little place, but the prison is an old and dismal place. Reg hadn't got on too bad there, but I had a lot of problems right from the start. The screws were nearly as bad as the ones at Durham, and there was also aggravation from some of the other cons. Reg had warned me the screws would try to wind me up. When he first got there, one of the screws said to another screw, "Did Richardson get his visiting form?" The other one turned to see if Reg was watching and said, "You mean Eddie?" Yes, he did. This was a deliberate reference to Eddie Richardson, who was also at Parkhurst. Eddie and his brother Charlie had been the leaders of the gang who were our biggest rivals in London. And there had been a lot of talk in the gutter press that the Richardsons were still out to get the Krays, even though we were all behind bars. It wasn't true, but the screws just wanted to get Reggie wound up, get him agitated, make him more likely to say or do the wrong thing. Then wallop in they would go and give him a good hiding. It would have suited them anyway to get things stirred up between Reg and Eddie, get them at each other's throat. But Reg was too smart to fall for that one. He knew what they were trying to do, and he didn't bite. With me, though, it was easier. Because of my mental problems, I had always gone off quicker than Reg if anyone upset me or slighted me. The screws knew that and used it. Also, in a big nick like Parkhurst, you always have to watch your back, because there's always other cons who may carry a grudge from something which happened years ago, or young cons who want to make a name for themselves by getting a name con like a Kray. That's one of the reasons Reg has kept himself so fit and hard over the years. He's had to. And even now he's getting on a bit. It would take a brave con or a stupid one to try it on with my brother. But things really started to go wrong for me at Parkhurst because of an assistant governor. I was very friendly with a particular con, who was a smashing fella. One day he was very upset because his mother had died of cancer. Like a lot of us, he had been very close to his mother, and the news had gutted him. I wanted to show my respect to my friend's mother, so I put in an application to send a wreath to her funeral. When you are a Category A con, you have to put in an application for just about everything. You almost have to put in an application to go and have a shit. But I didn't expect to have any problems over sending some flowers to a funeral. However, this governor called me to his office, and I could tell from the mean look on his face that this wasn't going to be straightforward at all. He said to me, "Kray, who are these flowers for?" I told him they were for my friend's mother, and I wanted his permission to get them sent. "Well, Kray," the bastard sneered, "permission is refused." Just like that. And that, as far as he was concerned, was the end of the matter. I could have smashed him to a pulp, but I didn't. All I did was swear at him, and that cost me another 7 days in choky, solitary confinement. Another week locked up by myself, 23 hours a day, basic rations. After that, it was downhill all the way. More trouble, more fights. In my time at Parkhurst, they did me for about 20 assaults and 1 charge of grievous bodily harm, but that was only what they did me for. In the 7 years I was in Parkhurst, I got involved in a lot more scraps than that. I also smashed up my cell a few times in frustration, really did it over. I couldn't help myself. When I was in solitary confinement, which was a lot, they used to lock me in what they called the strong box. And that's just what it was, really. It was a room, but it was built in the shape of a small box. It was really dark and claustrophobic. The whole room was made of concrete, including a little bed in the middle. They used to give me 1 blanket. Sometimes I didn't even get that. I used to have to sleep on the slab of cold stone that was the bed. It was not a nice place. There was a tiny exercise yard, well away from the other prisoners, to keep me separate. The screws were bastards, cruel bastards. There was one kind man, a medical officer called David Cooper. He let me take a radio into the strongbox to give me a bit of company. Funnily enough, at the end of my time in Parkhurst, it was on that radio that I heard I was being moved to Broadmoor. They announced it on the BBC Radio News, and I was listening to it in the strongbox. But all that was a long time after my fallout with the assistant governor over sending flowers to the funeral of Pete Gattrell's mother. That was really the turning point for me. That was when I really started to go downhill, fast. I sank into a hell of a depression, the worst I've ever known. All I could see was years and years in front of me as a Category A con, with constant supervision, restricted visits, no perks, and constant harassment. It was just a hopeless existence. My paranoia was getting worse all the time. My head hurt me. The pain was bad. I could feel the walls closing in on me. I could feel trouble all around me. I felt round every corner someone was waiting to jump me. I had some more fights with screws, more choky, and then I had a real bad fight with another con. I can't remember what it was about, but I think I hurt him bad. After that, they gave up on me. The medical officer at Parkhurst said I was insane, said I was a menace, and they were going to get rid of me. On the 25th of July, 1979, they did. They sent me to Broadmoor, and do you know something? When they told me I was coming here, when they told me they were going to send me to a lunatic asylum, I was pleased. For me, it meant 7 years of hell at Parkhurst were over. You see, I knew what they didn't know, what they never bothered to try and find out, because they didn't really care. I knew I was sick, really sick. When I came to Broadmoor, the doctors here explained to me, for the first time in my life, that I am a chronic paranoid schizophrenic. That doesn't mean I'm a raving lunatic, because I'm not, but it does mean I am ill and need medical help. Since then, I've done a lot of reading up on illness of the mind. The doctors here encourage you to learn about your illness, to try and understand it. That way, you have more of a chance of beating it, or at least coming to terms with it, living with it. The difference is that Broadmoor is a hospital. It is not a prison. It is a hospital for the criminally insane. It comes under the health department, not the Home Office, though the Home Office has to grant permission for a patient's release. The staff here are not warders, they are nurses. Because it is a hospital, someone like me has a much better chance of the right care and attention. In prison, someone like me is just regarded as a headbanger, a troublemaker. This kind of approach to mental illness is fairly new and it doesn't work with all patients, but it has helped me. My own reading has told me that schizophrenia means I have a split personality, a mind that can work in two ways, virtually at the same time. Schizophrenia causes severe depression, and that creates other problems. In my case, when I'm going into a depression, going into one, as I call it, one part of my mind creates suspicion, really bad suspicion that becomes paranoia. If I see two people talking together, my mind tells me they could be talking about me, could be plotting about me. Then my brain will tell me to go and stop them. It doesn't matter how, but they must be stopped. It's something I now realize that I have suffered from for many, many years, maybe for most of my life. It sounds simple, but it isn't. The most difficult thing about mental illness is trying to work out in your mind what is normal and what isn't normal, what is right and what isn't right. Believe me, insanity is a terrible sensation. They have shown me at Broadmoor how to recognize when I am going into one, how to read the signs, how to control the paranoia I feel by taking drugs. I now know what medication to take and when to take it. With the help of my drugs, I have learned how to control my madness, if that's what you want to call it. Thank you for listening. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I will see you again in the next one.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the YouTube description section.